I tried every meditation app out there for 6 months and I felt more anxious. Then I discovered this moving meditation and felt more calm in 10 minutes than I ever did sitting still. Have you ever sat down and tried to meditate, closed your eyes, and then 30 seconds later you're like, nah, this is not for me? The soothing voices and the gentle bells just make your mind feel louder. If you're convinced that you just have a restless brain that's somehow broken, you're not alone and the problem isn't you. It's this lie that we've been sold to about meditation as a whole. I'm Sushmita, but you can call me Sushi, and on this channel, I help you master your mind through yoga. And I grew up surrounded by yoga in India, and once I learned how to stop fighting with my restless energy and actually channel it through the powerful technique of Ashtanga Vinyasa, I learned that you don't have to sit still to meditate. You can find this in a moving meditation. And today we're going to be breaking down the science of why this works for people like us who can't sit still. And this isn't about achieving a no thought kind of like empty state of mind. It's about understanding how you're wired and finding what actually works for you. And if you want the full practice framework, check out the link in the description below where my yoga mastery program actually helps you achieve this. But more on that later, because by the end, you might just delete all those meditation apps on the phone. So for the better part of a decade, I've had this strange relationship with meditation. I've always heard that there's plenty of research to show how it's very, very useful, it's life-changing, it can provide stress relief, mental health improvements, improve your focus, and on and on and on. And I would think, wow, that's exactly what I need. And so I'd re-download that app that I rage deleted months ago, find a quiet corner, and then put in my earphones, and then hear that gentle voice, okay, close your eyes, relax your shoulders, and focus on your breath. And for the first 10 seconds, to be honest, it felt fine. It felt possible. And then the invasion would begin. Did I leave that thing on the stove? Did I need to get the car checked? What's for dinner? My leg is falling asleep. Has it only been 2 minutes? And I would get up and leave. And this quiet time was actually like just a perfect breeding ground for random thoughts to enter. And my heart rate, which was supposed to slow down because of the meditation, would just begin to climb. And my body would be screaming at me to get up and move. And I didn't feel refreshed. I felt more anxious and I just wanted to do something else because it felt like such a waste of time and energy to be sitting and doing nothing productive. And this cycle kind of repeated itself more and more times than I could count. And I tried everything. I tried Headspace, I tried Calm, even the YouTube gurus. And every attempt kind of ended with the same verdict. My brain was just too busy for yoga. And I accepted it as this personal flaw that I couldn't do anything about. And while other people could wake up in the morning and journal and meditate and drink their CCF and go on a run, my mind was just this stormy sea, and I couldn't command this stormy sea to just quiet. And I ended up just feeling exhausted, and I felt like I was always losing. So if you feel like you're uniquely bad at meditation, I know how isolating it can be, and just know it's not your fault, it's incredibly common, and it's not your personal failure. And even after this, I went to Vipassana meditation, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And it was 10 days of being in complete silence, no phones, no yoga, no reading books. And it was only on my 3rd trip that I realized there's something spectacularly wrong about just sitting and trying to force your mind to be still, wake up at 4 a.m. and do nothing else. And maybe I was young, maybe I was just 19 and I didn't know any better, but I officially threw in the towel on that 3rd trip. I never made myself meditate like that again, and I'm glad I didn't, because when I accepted my fate as just someone who is perpetually restless, I figured that peace and quiet wasn't for me. It was for other types of people, the kinds of people that drink decaf coffee. And I ended up spending that year literally leaning into the chaos and filling my schedule so tight that there was no room for a single quiet moment. And then a friend of mine mentioned that she was doing Ashtanga Yoga. And so I always dismissed yoga as too slow and too boring because that's how it was taught when I was growing up. But she actually described it differently. She was like, it's not slow at all. It's incredibly intense and you should come. You just move the whole time, you sweat, you feel amazing, and you can't really think about anything else because you're too busy trying to balance and not fall over. And I was like, okay, fine, maybe I'll try it. And that last part, when she said, you can't think about anything else, that part really caught my attention. So I tried it online in a safe, foolproof setting because I didn't want to embarrass myself. And it was a class that was led by this very famous teacher called 𝐸𝐸𝐿. It was a class on Yoga International. And I didn't go looking for meditation because I'd given up on that. I was looking for a workout. I was looking for a new way to burn off all that restless energy. And I was super fascinated. For the first 15 minutes or so, I won't lie, my mind was incredibly chaotic. I tried to follow the Surya Namaskars and I just felt wobbly and stuck. But the repetition was surprisingly useful. It was very good for my mind because the sheer physical effort that it took for me to focus on the sound of my breath and do everything right slowly just began to crowd out the restless noise and everything else. And I wasn't forcing my thoughts to quiet. I wasn't silencing the self-criticism. It was just being replaced by something more immediate, the present moment sensations and how I felt in my body. And my focus wasn't on emptying my mind or silencing my mind. It was actually on filling it. It was in filling it with the sensations of my hands and feet, on what was happening in the mat, the muscles, the breath, all of these things. And so for 90 minutes, for the duration of that class, I just kind of moved and breathed. And my mind wandered. But then I remember David's voice being just come back to the sound of the breath. And I realized the goal was never to not be distracted at all. It was actually just to simply return. And through that returning, I felt like I was strengthening this muscle that I didn't even know that I had. I finished the class and I was drenched in sweat. I was physically exhausted, but my mind was actually quiet. And it was this kind of calm that I'd never truly experienced before. I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't empty. It was still kind of buzzing, but it was clear. It wasn't this kind of forced calm where I was just sitting there and trying to focus on sensations that I could feel and then thoughts would come and interrupt it. It almost felt like I'd earned that through the sweat, through the movement, through all of that intensity. And after failing at meditation for so long, I realized maybe I'd just been using the wrong tool for me the whole entire time. And it's only when I began to dig into the science of why this works so well that I began to notice that it was easy for me to practice 6 days a week because it felt very accessible to me at that time. So for a mind like ours that's prone to restlessness, that's prone to anxiety, that's prone to hyperactivity, it's demanding absolute stillness and forcing it to be quiet is like asking a cheetah to be completely still in a field full of gazelles. It just goes against its very nature, right? And so for us with busy minds, we don't need passive tools. We need active tools. And traditional meditation, while very useful, can sometimes feel passive for minds like ours. You just end up sitting and observing. But for a restless mind, that emptiness can feel like this vacuum, and the anxiety and those random thoughts will just rush to fill that empty gap. And so moving meditations like Ashtanga, however, they can be deeply, deeply active, but still calming. And because it gives your brain something to do, it's always doing one of three concrete jobs. So it's either focused on the physical posture or the asana, or it's fixing itself on a specific gaze or a drishti, or it's focused on the controlled breath or the ujjayi pranayama that's happening in the background. And this is called the Trishtana method. I teach this inside my yoga mastery program, 𝐻𝐸𝐿. There's a link in the description below. But this means that you don't have that much mental bandwidth to worry about anything else. And then it gives all that restless energy a productive task. And when you combine these three elements, you get a system that's perfectly suited for the restless mind. And you're not fighting your energy, you're directing it. And this is really what changed for me, because what it looks like on the mat is that you're not just forcing your mind to be still, it's a practical, repeatable process. The practice then becomes a laboratory for the mind, and the goal is to not achieve this perfect state of unbroken, thought-free state of bliss. It's a real practice, and it's a real muscle that you're building. And the muscle that you're building is built in the act of returning. So there's a simple 4-step process that happens every single time you go through one of these sessions. The first step is that we have an attempt to focus. So you start a posture and then you intentionally begin to link your inhale and your exhale with the movement of the inhale and the exhale. And then you try and focus on your breath, you try and focus on your posture, and you try and focus on your gazing point. So you're trying to apply this Trishtana method. And for a moment, you're fully there, you're doing it, and it feels like you're winning. And then step 2 happens, where your mind begins to wander. And this is not a failure, let's be very, very clear. It's inevitable that your mind's going to wander. And then a thought pops up, and then you're like, oh, I wonder what time it is. Should I be doing the next thing? And then your attention in that moment has drifted. So step number 1 is an attempt to focus, and step number 2 is when your mind begins to wander. Step number 3 is where you notice the consequence of your mind wandering. So this is the brilliant part, because Ashtanga gives you this like kind of visceral feedback, because as soon as your focus slips, you'll feel it. Your breath can get shallow, your pose feels strained, you're not as stable in your Udita Hasta, you might wobble out of it. And the physical struggle, the physical inability to do the shape is a direct, tangible signal that your mental focus has wandered. And in that moment, you don't judge yourself, you just see it as just data. And so when you see that step number 3 is just that you notice the consequence in your posture, then it comes to step number 4, where you consciously and slowly return to the breath. And this is the most important part. This is where the yoga happens. You notice that you're wobbling in your physical posture. You notice that it's because of your wandering mind. And then without beating yourself up, you just gently guide your attention back to one of these 3 points. You re-engage with your breath, you kind of re-engage the posture again, and you find your gazing points. And in that moment, when you reconnect, you are actually competing just one single rep of that mental push-up, of that training that you're trying to do in the background of all of these shapes. You've strengthened your attention muscle, the thing that's become so weak because of the TikTokification of social media. You're using the practice to strengthen that muscle of your attention. And this cycle, where you're kind of doing a shape and you attempt to focus and then your mind wanders, but you notice the consequence and then you consciously return, this cycle is where you actually build the skill of yoga. So meditation isn't in like perfect focus. It's not like, you never get distracted. The meditation is in that process of returning. It's in when you get lost, when you think of other things, but you use the physical practice as a mirror to come back over and over and over again. Because this completely reframes your experience. And you see distraction not as a failure, not as a personal failure or like something that you just can't do, but as an opportunity to practice. And then this kind of dismantles the belief that you're broken, that you can't meditate. And so slowly over time, I began practicing this on the mat. And then I also saw how it changed my life off the mat. So it's not like my mind went silent after I started practicing this. I just wasn't so afraid of the noise when it came up. And I saw it as an opportunity to continue the practice of returning to whatever task I was focused on during the day. In the same way that I did it on the mat for an hour, I became less reactive, even when, something that would previously send me into a spiral. Like I started noticing my breath, noticing how to return to the present moment because I had a tool. And when I felt that familiar buzz of anxiety, I did my chant, I practiced a few rounds of Ujjayi breath, and I anchored myself in my body. And my ability to focus actually improved dramatically, and I never sat still. So for me, it wasn't about like finding the perfect app or going to some meditation retreat. It was about rediscovering this ability to synchronize the rhythm of the breath with movement, and that then became the most profound meditation of all the meditations I tried. And even me, like right now, writing and filming and making these videos for you, it's a direct consequence of being able to practice enough mental push-ups so that I could make my attention stronger and deliver these in one flow. And it's a skill that can be learned. And this is literally what I teach my students inside my yoga mastery program, where I teach them how to notice the wandering mind and then gently bring it back to the practice. And my students tell me all the time about how this impacts their work, their relationships, and their overall psychological well-being. So if you want that, if you don't want to be like, stuck with these meditation apps that don't work for you anymore, you want to be productive and happy and healthy, and who doesn't want that, right? There is a link in the description below to set up a call with me. Just do that. Honestly, let's chat and let's see if I can help you. So if you've struggled with meditation and you felt that familiar sense of frustration, I want you to hear this. Sometimes for people like us, it's not always that we have to sit down and meditate. The kind of focus and freedom that you're seeking can be found in intentional movements, and your restless energy isn't a flaw. You can't be stamped out with gentle chimes and soothing voices. It needs to be harnessed. It's a force that's your strength. And for people like us, we just need to have like a powerful way to direct it. And if you're curious to start, you don't need to directly jump into a 90-minute class. Don't do primary series on YouTube. Just begin slowly and start with the basics, because the journey to mental peace looks different for different people, and you don't have to subscribe to what other people are doing currently or what mass media tells you. And if you want to learn more about how you're specifically wired and find a thing that works for you, then subscribe to my YouTube channel, because that then tells the algorithm to send you a video next time I make it. And if you have any questions related to your practice, pop them in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for watching till the very end. I hope you have a lovely day ahead, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.